taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
How we doing, everybody? The Celtics lose again. This time to the Golden State Warriors. I'm Ian, my co-host Seamus here. What are our initial thoughts, Seamus? I know you have you got a lot to think about right now, I'm assuming.
Well, of course, because we came in here on Monday night after we beat the Bucks, and I came in here kind of somber, going, I can't even get excited over these wins anymore because they're not going to lead anywhere good. You have to consistently string together wins in the NBA to really get some. And the Celtics have not done that whatsoever for the past year at all. The Celtics right now, you look at this game tonight, they had multiple opportunities to win down the stretch. And if you don't dig yourself a hole early, you probably pull this game out. You only lost by 4. You're down by 14 and a half. So the Celtics, many opportunities to pull a game like this out, and this happens a lot with the team. Yet they come away with the L, the home L, after 3 days of rest at home. And so this is really just goes along with the consistent trend of this team. Now, there's still more judgment period because Jaylen Brown is still being integrated back into the lineup. And also tonight must be mentioned a bunch of COVID absences on both sides. Warriors, they didn't have 3 of their main rotational players. Klay Thompson obviously has been out for 2 years. Jordan Poole earlier got put in COVID protocols, and obviously James Wiseman, who's been out for nearly a year now. So a lot of players missing tonight, so hard to assess the full picture of both teams, but the consistent trend stays with the Celtics. Despite there being more judgment period with this team, I think they're going to be a little bit better than 500, but I still don't think they're on the caliber of the Warriors, the Suns, the Bucks at the end of the day, and the Nets, and the Jazz for that matter. I don't think the Celtics reach those heights, and we're just seeing evidence of it night in and night out with these good wins and these bad losses. They go hand in hand. They never appear at different points in the schedule. They're always right next to each other. Always.
Yep.
And it's game to game.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, man. This was a game the Celtics easily could have won. This was a game the Celtics really needed to win. And they couldn't get it done. It kind of sucks. It kind of sucks because I mean, we had a chance to win this game. We had a lot of chances to win this game, really. But yeah, it was a tough game. Another rough first quarter, another terrible first half. I mean, is this team ever going to find any consistency when it comes to starting a game? I don't think I've ever seen a team have this much trouble starting a game before.
Yeah, I don't really know what the deal is with the whole starting thing. I mean, this has really been a problem dating back to obviously last season, I would say for sure, but I don't know if I can think of a point farther than that. I think the 1920 team was fairly good at starting games, but this year's team, I mean, you look at this game, just completely on brand from the Celtics and how they started this game. You go down, I believe they were down, 8 after the first quarter, and I believe they were down as much as 12 in the first quarter at one point, and then you surrender a 20-point lead later in the game, go down 14 at half, and then eventually you come back, take the lead in the fourth, early in the fourth by 2, and then the rest of the fourth quarter, you have multiple opportunities. You have at least 1, 2, 3 opportunities where the game you could either put yourself in the lead or put it to a one-possession game, and the Celtics, they missed out on every single opportunity when it came to that matter, and this is a consistent trend with this team. You put yourself in a hole early. You play good throughout the game, like we've seen. Their net rating in the first quarter, -10. It might be up, it's updated from them, but -10. Second and third quarter, it's +10, +11. You're playing good throughout the game, and then the fourth quarter, kind of like tonight, I didn't think that in the fourth quarter that they were particularly good. I thought the early portion of the fourth they were good, but then down the stretch, multiple missed opportunities, and that's what ultimately sinks this team at the end of the day is when they miss out on those opportunities at the end of the games and start these games bad, and you're just giving away points. You can't do that. This team is playing well throughout games, but they're not finishing games correctly, nor are they starting games correctly. And what can you even say at this point? It's a consistent trend, and we saw it yet again tonight. And this is just cliche at this point. If you look at the lead tracker on this game, the Celtics, if you averaged out their leads or surrendered leads throughout games, it would look the same pretty much every single game. It really would.
Every game is kind of just a copy paste of the last game with just a different outcome sometimes. But the Celtics are back to being below 500. I think we're now 14-15, which is not the ideal place you wanted the Celtics team to be, but we kind of accepted this kind of early that this team might just be a 500 level team. But
I accepted it on Monday or on last Friday. I went on a whole
Seamus.
I'm like, we lose to the Suns, we're just gonna beat the Bucks here, good win, and then just continue tonight. Bad loss against the Warriors. I would say it's a bad loss. Like, even though they're better than us, I mean, we had so many chances to win this game. Just so many down the stretch. Yeah. And if you don't dig the hole, you have even more. So it's tough pill to swallow. It is.
It really is. And something I want to talk to you about was the fourth quarter. You know, Jason Tatum played 42 minutes tonight. I mean, 41-57, but he basically played 42 minutes tonight. He got like no touches in the fourth quarter. It felt like Ime Udoka was trying to do everything he could to draw plays that didn't involve Tatum in the fourth quarter. Now, I'm not sure if that means it was Tatum's fault for not being aggressive enough and trying to get the ball, or it was Udoka's fault for drawing up plays that didn't involve Tatum. But I feel like they should have involved Tatum a lot more down the stretch, and that it feels like it kind of hurt the Celtics in the end. But I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the Celtics, just their whole offensive system as a whole, is not getting it done, period. Like, they have good stretches, like they do have good ball movement and guys facilitating well, but most of the time the Celtics offense, it just looks like guys are searching. And that's a constant theme both at the end of games and at the start of games when we're just discussing here. That is when the team meets their most problems. And you look at their offense during these times, the Warriors move the ball. It's all decisive decisions. It's bam, pass, wait for the action, pass, bam, open three, or you're driving to the rim. You're making decisive decisions. And the Celtics, the whole time they're on offense, it's always like they're searching for something. They're always pulling it back, looking like, what do we do? It's always uncertain drives to the rim, and then it's, we're just finding whoever we can on the drive. And eventually that's going to catch up to you. Even, the Celtics, they have good offensive talent. Obviously, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Dennis Schroeder, he's a good scorer as well when he's out there. Marcus Smart can put up some points as well, along with Al Horford. They have good offensive players that can put up points, but if you're not running an efficient system, it's going to catch up to you against good teams, like it did in Phoenix and like it did at the beginning of this game and at the end of this game tonight against the Warriors. And I just don't see, that's really where the huge discrepancy is for me between all these good teams and the Celtics is offense. It really is, because the Celtics are a fairly good defensive team, but at the end of the day, if they're not running an efficient offense to keep up with these other teams, they're going to be below them in terms of tiers. They're going to be below them, and that's ultimately why they're a 500 team right now too, because every other team in the league is now shifting more towards, hey, let's run and gun, let's run on offense, let's play quick on offense, let's score a lot of points. And the Celtics, it's always been their defensive identity that they've leaned on, but their offense has to eventually catch up to that. And that's ultimately what's holding them back at times this season, despite them having good offensive players who can put up points. So it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And like I said the other night, this season, it's really just, this is a team of assets, and we're trying, I believe, to make a big splash next summer to actually attain players who can, fit next to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and also run an efficient system on offense, hopefully, and
Yeah,
also the team as well. You have to get that third star or assortment of players that actually fit together. This team, I don't
doesn't
see
fit.
it at times. These pieces just don't fit at times, and that's part of the problem here too.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's been really bad, man. Like, it's kind of tough to think about, but at the same time, I kind of thought about this for a little bit now that we've had all this break. The Celtics can't win with just Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown being their guys. They need a third star. I always thought it was going to complicate things more, but now that I think about it, more and more and more, the Celtics desperately need a third star. I don't know who that third star is. I don't know if that's Bradley Beal. I don't know if that's Damian Lillard. I don't know if that's Karl Anthony Towns. Like, whoever it is, the Celtics need a third guy around Brown and Tatum that can be consistent enough. And I mean, at this point, it looks like we need a point guard. We need a guy who can facilitate, and we need a guy who can pass the ball to everyone around. And that's just something that, as much as I love Marcus Smart, and he had 8 assists tonight. He had a really, really good game tonight. Defensively, offensively. It's tough sometimes. It's hard because there's games. I know that kind of veered away from the third star thing, but I want to talk about Marcus Smart now. The thing that I love about Marcus Smart is that he hustles all the time. You know, we know this. Marcus Smart is known for diving on the floor, hustling, making plays, like providing energy. That's what Marcus Smart is known for. But my problem with Smart sometimes is his decision making. He had 6 assists tonight, and he had 3 turnovers, and it felt like anytime he turned the ball over, it was in a crucial situation. The Celtics are down by 3. I remember one specific time. Celtics were down by 3 or down by 2. They had a chance to take the lead in the third quarter, around the end of the third quarter. Marcus Smart throws it 10 feet above Tatum's head, and it's a turnover. Now, I don't know what your opinion is on Marcus Smart. Do we look to trade him and move him for a different player? Or do we keep him around and use him as something else? I guess my question is, what do we get for Smart, and if we don't, where do we use him?
Well, I think there has to be a long-term plan with this team, and I don't know whether or not that involves Marcus Smart or not, mainly because Marcus Smart, they wanted him to be the starting point guard this year, to be more of a facilitator, but Marcus Smart, he's a good facilitator, but I'm not convinced that he is a primary playmaker, a guy who you want running your offense as the point guard, as your starting point guard every single night. And on the contract he's on right now, it's fair to say that, maybe the Celtics could keep Marcus in the future and bring him off the bench, which, under his contract they would be doing with the extension that's going to be kicking in next year. However, you look at Marcus Smart, he's a perfect bench player. He is. He's your perfect
He really is.
man player, and that's exactly what he was a couple of years ago. And since the 1920 season, since January, February, I want to say, of that season, when I believe Jaylen Brown went out and Hayward went out and Kemba went out, and they were out on different occasions, Marcus Smart took a bigger role in the offense, and ever since then, he's been more and more confident to get himself involved in the offense. Now he's taken a little bit of a step back this season, throughout the season, compared to, the first couple of games, but I'm still not convinced. Like, if you look at the offense, when the ball needs to get moving, when guys need to get moving off ball, Marcus Smart, he's kind of a dribbler. He kind of airs the ball out. Like, he's a good facilitator, but you need quick, decisive passes. You need guys setting up the offense. And Marcus Smart, he's a good secondary playmaker, and he can be a primary playmaker off the bench, but I'm just not convinced that he is your top point guard starting in the starting lineup. And that's where last offseason, I mentioned this in the group chat, we should have thrown the sink at Jrue Holiday. I think he would have been perfect for this team. But now you look at it too, and Isaiah Thomas at the free throw line, number 31 for the Lakers right now. Wow.
Hey, shout out IT for
just interrupting
getting a chance.
Makes his first free throw. Yeah, I hope he kills it for the Lakers for real. But
me too.
Yeah, I think every Celtic fan thinks that. But what was I talking about here with
You're talking about Smart and how we should have traded for Jrue Holiday.
Yeah. Drew Holiday, you look at it, and you can say this has been the argument with the Celtics for the past year and a half now. They're not going to go out and make a big splash if they think they're not actually going to compete. Like last year, they went out and got Fournier to retain his rights to potentially, attain him in the future. But they weren't going to go out and trade a bunch of picks and players for a guy like Harrison Barnes or Jeremy Grant or someone like that, where they're just not going to lead you to a championship. But if you look at the Drew Holiday situation, they tried to trade Kemba for him. Didn't happen. I wonder what the Pelicans actually wanted in exchange if that deal were to happen, because if we would have been able to throw the kitchen sink at them, Milwaukee is automatically worse. And that's what I was talking about, actually. Is you look at the standings and you go, well, are we going to compete against this team? Well, Milwaukee, if they have Eric Bledsoe instead of Drew Holiday, I highly doubt they win the finals last year.
Yeah.
I highly doubt it. Okay, and if we had Drew Holiday, maybe we're not as good last season, and then this season we're better, and Milwaukee's still worse without him. So I'm not, this is just a big hypothetical what if, and it's just going to remain a what if forever. But that was kind of your third star you're looking for there, where he's probably not an A-lister, I would say, where he's like a consistent all-star every single year. But he is certainly a star on both ends of the floor, and someone who can both run your offense and be a just dog defender on the other end of the floor. That would be a perfect, and also a veteran leader at that too, next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. You bring a guy like that, a third star like that, in here, and that's just completely ideal. Another third star that would have been ideal looking back at it, and we could have got him theoretically. I just don't think it would have been just crazy at the time if we did pursue him. It just wasn't realistic at the time. But Chris Paul, obviously, he's perfect on every team. It seems
on this team.
I mean, he brings a championship. I know he doesn't have a ring, but he deserves one because he brings championship culture to every single locker room in terms of actually getting it done and winning games and just being a leader and a general out on the floor. He would have been perfect next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but I understand why the Celtics didn't go after him at the time.
Yeah,
Injury prone, contract is major, and are you going to bet your future on Chris Paul? Probably not. So the Celtics,
knowing Chris Paul and the Celtics' luck, he would have gotten injured in like his first game, and we would have been screwed.
Yeah, but Chris Paul, that's just another example. Those are two stars that were mildly available throughout the past couple of years, and I understand why the team didn't go after them in a certain sense, but those were kind of the perfect third stars next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and they come out, they're succeeding. They both made the finals last year. They're both succeeding in their respective places. And the Celtics, I don't really know if there's an answer for their third star out there. I mean, I know Bradley Beal is thrown around a lot. I think he would be great next to these two. I worry a little bit about this team just being ultra stagnant. I mean, I wouldn't worry about the scoring anymore because we know we're getting points from all three guys if we were able to keep Brown in that situation. But I worry a little bit about all three guys in isolation. The Wizards are a team that runs a lot of isolation. But Dinwiddie, you bring him in with Tatum and Brown, they already do a lot of ISO. And then you bring in Beal into that equation. That's what I would be worried about. So he's not ideal, but I still like him, in terms of actually adding him, obviously. But then after that, there's no obvious star. Is there an obvious point guard out there? Is there an obvious guard out there? Because we're going to be looking for guards at the end of the day. I highly doubt we're going to pair up three wings or get a star.
That would be terrible.
Unless Sabonis. I'm just going to say this. I don't think we're going to get Sabonis, but people are throwing around Domantas Sabonis' name as if he's not better than Miles Turner. Domantas Sabonis
he is 100% better than Miles Turner.
I don't think people understand. Domantas Sabonis hasn't even been fully unleashed because he's playing next to Miles Turner. So If you bring him into a situation somewhere, who knows what kind of player he can become, and he's such an underrated playmaker. I hate when people bring up, this has been something that I've seen on Twitter a couple times, not to, get in big with social media, but people are saying, Domantas Sabonis doesn't fit what the Celtics want to do. He doesn't fit on the Celtics. What are the Celtics trying to do with this team? I said on Monday, I'm like, this team is just a team full of assets. If that is seriously the case, which it actually seems like it is this season, what are you trying to do on your team? Like, oh, it doesn't fit their offense. It's like, no, our offense is actually just atrocious. It's actually just, oh, let me dribble up the court. Oh, my first pass isn't there. Oh, I'm screwed. I don't know what I'm doing after this. There's no system there. There's no system. It's literally all just ISO. Find this pass. Find whoever's open. Like, there's no system like you see with the Warriors or the Suns. So there's no such thing as, oh, he doesn't fit, because there's no fit right now. And that's understandable to some extent. Ime Udoka is a first-year coach, so, it's fine. But right now, there's no such thing as fit on this team right now.
Exactly. We're basically just a team of everything, really. So I have a game that I'd like to play as we were talking about trades and such. So let's play America's favorite game show, Trade or No Trade. So I'm going to name you a player on the Celtics, and you have to tell me if they're going to get traded or not.
Ooh,
either this trade deadline or this offseason. So, Romeo Langford.
Okay, so he's not going to be moved by the deadline, because I highly doubt that the Celtics will be in a position in which they want to cash in on one of their younger, talented pieces that maybe another team would be interested in later in the summer or in a package. I don't see him being moved at the deadline. And if he's moved during the summer, it's not going to be one of those moves where it's like, okay, we're moving Romeo Langford for draft picks or whatever. He would have to be in a package to be moved, or be moved in a deal that we'd be receiving more veteran talent. But I find it hard. Like, where is that deal going to come up? It typically doesn't. How many times do teams trade a middle of the road young player for better veteran talent? It just doesn't really happen that often. And plus, the deals don't usually work out. So Romeo Langford, he's going to be here next year. I believe, if something does not come up during the summer in terms of packaging for a star. But the Celtics are in that business, so it's possible.
All right. So we have a Romeo Langford. I personally think he doesn't get traded. That's just my opinion. I feel like he'll be on the Celtics for a few more years.
There's a lot of potential with Romeo too. I must add.
He does have a lot of potential. His cutting is so good compared to everyone else on this team, it feels like.
Well, and even looking at the offensive end of the floor with Romeo, coming into the league, he was advertised as the scorer, this good ball handler, maybe not as much as a playmaker, but he can develop into that. Yet it's been his defense early on that's really been keeping him on the court at times. And I think if you look at his career, we've talked about this many times with his injury history, this is really his rookie year in a certain sense. That said, the reason it's his rookie year is because of all the injuries. And right now he sustained another one for tonight, for crying out loud. I mean, he just can't get away from injuries. And that's probably the main concern with him. But you like what you have in this player, we have in Romeo Langford moving forward in terms of what you can develop him into. Because I don't think he's going to be this guy just middling his entire career. You don't know what he is, and then he falls out of the league. I think he's going to be an actual role player. It's just, how high level of a role player can he be? So that's why, I think he'll be here for a while.
Definitely. All right, let's move on to our next contestant here. And this one might be an obvious answer, but knowing the Celtics, it's not really the obvious answer here. Dennis Schroeder. Does Dennis Schroeder get traded or not traded?
He's definitely gone from the team after February. I don't see why not, really. I mean, there was a chance with Dennis Schroeder, right, that if this Celtics team looks good throughout the first couple of months of the season, which we're kind of seeing play out right now, if they're good throughout the first couple of months, hey, maybe this is a point guard or a player that you want here next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Maybe he is a player that we want to give $20 million to in the offseason and let it ride. But if you look at the Celtics throughout their first almost 30 games now, 29 games, they're 13-14. Maybe not all that fair to assess the entire team because they really haven't been together, but a lot of other teams haven't been together too. So I don't know how fair that is. But you look at Dennis Schroeder and why they signed him, and you look at, the fact that this team, I believe, is made up of assets that Brad tried to attain. I think Dennis Schroeder, he was purposely signed for the Celtics to prop him up a little bit and then offload him at
Move
the
on.
deadline. Because why would you do the same? I think Brad Stevens probably got annoyed with the fact that Danny Ainge throughout the years, he was just letting talent go on the free agent market. And if you do the same thing with Schroeder, if you're just going to waste this one season with Schroeder and keep him the whole season and then waste him in free agency where he's just walking for nothing, what was this season even for if you're going to finish 500 or at the 7 or 6 seed and get knocked out in the first or second round? What was that Dennis Schroeder signing for if you don't, do something with him? And
Yeah.
I don't think we're winning the championship this year. I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone. But, and that's really the reason why you'd offload him at the deadline. There's no really other reason other than they think, hey, he can come back and fit next to these guys, which I think he's a really good player. I think Dennis Schroeder's a good player, but I don't think he's the perfect guy to fit next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to propel them to a championship, especially not at his price tag that he's going to demand over the summer, and somebody's going to pay him. So Dennis Schroeder is definitely gone. I hate saying that because I love Dennis Schroeder and how aggressive he's been with this team this year. And, compared to other years now with the Celtics, or last year, I should say, with the Celtics, Dennis Schroeder was a breath of fresh air coming in. But ultimately, I think in 2 months, he's going to be on another team somewhere. He's going to be on a contending team that actually wants him and actually, has intentions of paying him that the Celtics probably don't at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said in the past, Danny Ainge was known for letting all-star talent go, whether that be Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, not Kemba Walker, but Isaiah Thomas. Not really Isaiah Thomas. Well, you get what I mean. Al Horford. Let's just say that. But yeah, he was known for letting the guys that he got go for basically nothing, really. And this is an interesting one, the next one here. This is the second to last one. I got one more after this, but this one's interesting. Josh Richardson. Is it trade or no trade of Josh Richardson?
This one's an interesting one. This one could flip either way, in my opinion. I think Josh Richardson, I think they ultimately want to keep him for later on down the line, later on in the summer when a potential, Beal trade comes up or some other superstar potentially comes available, maybe Damian Lillard, who knows. And Josh Richardson's salary right now, he's at, I believe, $12 million right now.
Yeah,
He'll be on a $11 million deal next year, and that is why they ultimately extended him. That's why I don't think he'll be traded at the deadline this year, unless they'll have to get a Godfather offer for Josh Richardson at the deadline this year. I'm gonna just shoot that down right now. Not happening. I highly doubt a team is gonna offer something really, really good for Josh Richardson to the point of, oh, we cannot refuse this offer. But I think in the long run, in the summer, they are probably going to try to move him because at the end of the day, Josh Richardson, good aggressive player, good defensive player, not a shooter. He's taken up $11 million of the salary cap. Do you want $11 million of the salary cap to be used on a non-shooter who you plan on maybe in the playoffs? Maybe he's buried in the rotation a little bit. I don't know. I think they try to move on from him during the summer in a big deal. And you look at why they extended him in the first place. It was to attain the asset. Why are you extending Josh Richardson randomly for 1 year, $11 million? That's just before he even plays a game. It's because you want to keep him. It's because, well, number one, he would take that deal because the Mavericks just traded him for nothing at the time, for Moses Brown, essentially. So they're like, goodbye. That's a team that straight up does not want you. He takes the money the next year. That's just an obvious financial decision that he's going to make. And the Celtics now, instead of him being a free agent during the summer where you're looking at it and you're going, should we compete out here for Josh Richardson, who was okay during his first year with the team? Are we going to compete with that? Are we just going to lose him for nothing? Or are we going to try to trade him at the deadline at the last minute to a contending team that's, hey, not going to want to give up a ton of pieces for Josh Richardson? No, we're going to extend him and we're going to keep him in the summer next year. Now we just have that in the arsenal for next year. That's why they extended him, and that's probably when they're going to try to offload him, either during the summer or during next year's trade deadline. I think there's, or maybe, I don't know, a world comes up. If they don't unload him, maybe they try to extend him past that and he's on this team for 4 years. I think more likely he's going to be trying to move. They're going to try to move him. The front office is going to try to move him next summer because why else would you extend him? It doesn't make any sense. 1 year, $11 million for someone who hasn't played. Doesn't make any sense.
Definitely. And the thing with Richardson is I feel like he would have to be like, he wouldn't be the centerpiece of a package, but he would be a supporting piece.
Yeah,
that you would throw in for a Damian Lillard trade or a Bradley Beal trade.
And a good salary filler to it. 11,
definitely.
12 million. That's a tremendous salary filler. Going just away from the talent, like he's actually a trade piece in himself. Now I don't know how much value he has on the open market, but just as a salary filler in itself, like he has tremendous value in that sense because his deal isn't preposterous. But it's a deal that you can sneak in there and actually make a deal happen where you're not, forbidding or you're not going against the rules or trying to go against the rules in terms of matching salary, which teams don't do. But you know what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Makes it easier to match salary. Bottom line.
All right, so we're down to our final contender for trade or no trade. We all know this is America's favorite game show that I just came up with on the spot. So, final piece, fan favorite. We love him, but he does make a lot of money, and we just traded for him. Al Horford. Does Al Horford get traded? Trade or no trade? Al Horford.
This is hard because, all these are hard, obviously. It's hard to tell the future of any team because the NBA is absolutely insane. We had Shimi Ojale for 1 to 2 more years than I thought. I swear. It works out randomly. But Al Horford...
And he got a contract with the Bucks, so look at that.
Well, yeah, it's always good when you make it to your second contract in a professional sports league. That means somebody wants you, actually, during your career. But Al Horford, he's made a lot of money in his career, and he's due to make a lot of money next season. $26.5 million, I think, is the actual number next season. And if this is a clause in the contract. If he is waived, though, before training camp, or actually it's either before training camp or before the regular season, one of the two. I forgot which one. He only receives $14 million of that salary. So the Celtics can theoretically cut Al Horford next year, right? Before the season or before training camp, whatever the deadline is, either or. And essentially, you cut off, $12.5 million worth of salary off your books. Yeah. But in that case, if you wanted to have him back, and if you didn't want to just waste $14 million in 1 year on Al Horford, which would be kind of stupid, if you wanted to have him back, you could do something where you waive him, and then you bring him back on a restructured deal on top of whatever he's making, which would now go into the dead money category, and then have a new deal and have him make up the money, say, extended down the line, or you don't have him make up the money at all, and you just have him on a smaller deal. Who knows if he'll want to accept that, but it might come down to that. Just saying.
Yeah.
We saw it last year with the Pistons. They did it with Corey Joseph last year. It was a much smaller situation, but that is something the Celtics can do with Al Horford if they want to move forward with that, because he's going to be here throughout the summer, and then he's going to be here next season, and then he's a free agent. So that also, that puts something, a little twist to this too, because now I think Al Horford, he's been this untradeable player from Philadelphia to Oklahoma City, and even now some people might label him as such because he was traded for Kemba Walker, who's not even playing right now, let's face it. But Al Horford, he still has some value, and teams, this is where the bottom feeder teams come in. And it sounds terrible because there's some people who, buy into this whole, Celtics need to maintain the status of loyalty because of what they did to Isaiah. No. Look around the league. There's absolutely no loyalty whatsoever. Like the Raptors. Like, you just trade away DeMar DeRozan, win a championship. I didn't hear anything about loyalty after that happened. There's no such thing as loyalty in professional sports. There really isn't. It's a business at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I think the Celtics, if the deal were to come around next year, like I'm already talking about, hey, if they want to keep him next year, they can waive him, get the $14 million, keep him at that number, and then add on whatever salary, bring him back on whatever salary, the minimum or whatever you want to bring him back on, and whatever he accepts if he doesn't get something out in the open market. If you want to keep him, you can do that. But there's also a situation where you could just move him and create salary space for free agents, which is entirely possible because Al will be 36 next season. Do you want Al Horford next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum when I think right now they're already questioning his health a little bit because they're being a little cautious on back-to-backs.
Yeah.
And he's, he has COVID right now and whatnot, but that's a whole nother situation. But you look at it, I think Al Horford, I think they either do try to offload his salary next season. I think they either try to move him in, say, a sign-in trade deal. Who knows what happens in that sense? What comes available. Or they do that other plan I just said, where if they want to keep him, I think they'll waive him first and then restructure his deal and create salary space that way, which could be very interesting because that could happen before the summer, and they could create a whole bunch of salary space for themselves for the summer and create cap space that way. And then after that, you have other contracts you can move. Robert Williams, all of a sudden, you can move. Josh Richardson, Marcus Smart, all these guys are assets. And so the Celtics just have so many lanes. Like, this is why this is kind of hard to say whether or not these guys are actually going to get traded or, some of them might stay around. Because the Celtics now, this is what I really talked about last summer and what was good. Even though we're not that good this season, last summer was so good for the team in terms of team building because you just attained so many paths to take. You just created so many paths for yourself to take. Brad Stevens did by attaining all these assets and extending all these guys past next summer to where you have all this salary on your books and it's actual movable salary. You don't have Lakers salary where you have LeBron James $40+ million, Russell Westbrook $40+ million, Anthony Davis $40+ million. All those guys are $40+ million players, and then after that, your only trade piece is basically Taylor Horton Tucker, who's making $10 million. And it's like people aren't really interested in Taylor Horton Tucker. You have to dangle those players out. No one's openly going out there and trying to get Taylor Horton Tucker, despite the reports. It's the Lakers calling around the league, and that's basically what the Celtics have done, or they did last summer, is they created so many paths for themselves, created so much flexibility for not only themselves now, if they wanted to do something now, which I don't think they will do with this trajectory of this team and what they structured last summer. And also, obviously, I just said summer of 2022, that's the grand plan. That is the grand plan at the end of the day. And that's ultimately, the turning point. I think next summer is the turning point of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's career in Boston, I believe is going to be the case. Because if you botch this summer, if you completely botch this summer, it's going to go downhill. If you come back 500 again and you have some of the same pieces and it's still working in the same, way, it's going to be bad news for the franchise. So this is an important summer and it's aligning. The stars are aligning that way. And so I think the only person, bottom line right now, who's traded during the season, I think is Dennis Schroeder. Very interested to see what we get from him because a lot of teams are not going to be wanting to give up a ton of assets for a guy like that. That being said, who knows? Maybe a team, they need to push themselves past the mark, and I just don't know what we get for him because teams are going to be wanting to give us draft picks, contending teams, and we're just not going to be in that business. So I think Dennis Schroeder, he's definitely moved. Interesting to see what he's moved for. And then all these other guys, I think it's during the summer, we'll see. We'll see. Because all these other guys, I think, are very expendable, especially during the summer when teams just have way more flexibility than they do at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
I know I just went on a long spiel there, but that's just the state of the team.
No,
in terms
I
of
mean
building.
you did exactly what I hoped for when I came up with this completely original and pre-planned idea of trade or no trade. So thank you for that. And now, before we go, let's talk a little bit about tomorrow's game against the New York Knicks at home at 7:30. You can watch it on NBC Sports Boston. What are we thinking with this game? Knicks have been struggling. Celtics are 500. What you guaranteed this win, by the way. You guaranteed this win a while ago.
I have it written down somewhere on paper over here. But this Knicks game, this is ultimately a game, this is going to be one of those games. It's the Celtics. They're going to lose this bad game against the Warriors. And granted, the Warriors are a good basketball team, but they had chances to win this game tonight and didn't, of course, on your home floor after 3 days rest.
Of course.
Tomorrow, I expect a legitimate win out of the Celtics. The Knicks are struggling hard. They're going to show up for this game. I mean, the Celtics have to show up for this game as well tomorrow, but the Knicks will show up for this game despite them sucking right now. And the Celtics, they have to match their energy. And also, I think this is a much different game than we saw the first time out against the Knicks. I think there's going to be a lot less scoring from them. I think there's going to be a lot less three-point shooting from them, particularly. No Kemba Walker, most likely, depending on what Tibbs wants to do. Fournier is in and out of the lineup. Who knows what's happening? That team is just middling right now. I think it's probably going to be a pending disaster eventually, because they're going to realize that, oh my Lord, we're still we're below 500 team. We're kind of a lottery team. We're not really a playoff team anymore. What happened here? And it's going to be just, you're in purgatory once again. So RIP Knicks fans. But the Celtics, I expect them to win tomorrow. We're better than the Knicks this year, and they are struggling right now. So just win tomorrow, Celtics. We're not asking for much. We're really just asking for entertainment at this point after what I just said, where I'm like, yeah, I think the whole team's going to be like blown up next summer or whatever. But right now, hey, play the games, play to compete, play for the city, I guess. I have no idea. Play for something, because New York Knicks and Boston Celtics, I think both these teams are not winning the championship, but I want to see a show. We got to see another show.
Definitely.
So give us a show, Celtics and Knicks. And Celtics, they just have to show up, please, early. Please do it early.
Definitely. Well, I agree with you. This is we say it's a big game, but in reality, it's just another game.
All of
Celtics
these games, it's kind of funny. All these games we said were big games are really not at all. In the long run, like, I think in a void, they are big games, because theoretically, if you win all of them, we go 82-0. No one's really questioning us anymore. But
we wouldn't have anything to talk about on the Celtics Talk Weekly if the Celtics were 82-0, except us talking about them winning the championship.
It would eventually become like we would have a giant whiteboard behind us. We'd just be marking off all the teams. And like eventually we get to the point where we're like, oh, and we beat you a second time. We beat you a third time. We beat you a fourth time. And that would just be what we talked about. Like, remember that first win against the Cavs and then the last win against the Cavs? That was so great. Remember when we were better than the Cavs and beat them every time? Yeah, that was so great.
Yeah.
Oof. We're not better than the Cavs anymore. It's kind of sad, but anyway, tangent for another day.
Let's before we go, I do want to give an update on our friend Celtics. Well, not our friends, personally, but Celtics fans' favorite player, Isaiah Thomas, my favorite player, the player that got me to love basketball. He's played 8 minutes with the Lakers so far. He's got 7 points, 1 of 2 shooting. He's 5 of 6 free throws, and the Lakers are losing 54-45 against the Timberwolves. So it's great. Best of both worlds. The Lakers are losing and Isaiah Thomas is playing. And that's all that matters to me.
Numbers too.
So shout out to Isaiah Thomas. He's 5 of 6 from the free throw line.
I got to say too, Isaiah Thomas, I should have put up his jersey over here, but Isaiah Thomas, he's wearing 31. I wanted to be number 31 during my basketball career. I don't know why. I like 13 and 31. So to see him wearing 31, amazing, but in a Lakers uniform, not cool, man. Not cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the Celtics wanted to sign him, I guess they would have. But that concludes the Celtics Talk Weekly tonight. Again, shout out to Isaiah Thomas for getting a spot back in the NBA. We're all rooting for you, and I hope you finish the season out with the Lakers. And best case scenario, you win a ring. But you can always, you'll always be welcomed back in Boston if you ever want to come back, or if Brad Stevens signs you back. But with that, thank you guys for watching. Follow the Celtics Talk Weekly on Instagram, Celtics_Talk Weekly on Twitter, Celtics Talk Weekly on TikTok. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that we do our podcast that we occasionally do sometimes when all of us are free at all at one time. But we'll definitely have to figure out how to get more podcast episodes out to you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Wait, no. Yep, there it is. That's Seamus. I'm Ian. And shout out to Rob and Justin who couldn't make it tonight. And go Celtics.